What's up, addicts? As you can see, my quarantine hair is getting longer and longer, but that doesn't stop me from coming at you with our first version of Dynasty trade reports. Now that the draft is over, we're going to go division by division, break down some of our favorite buys in Dynasty right now if you're looking to make trades either before or after your rookie draft. Go through that now. So anyway, before we get into that video, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. It helps us out a lot, and let's go. Okay, so in this first video, we're going to break down the AFC North and look at all four teams here, give a high overview of some of the main changes that we've seen to the team due to free agency and the draft, and use that to kind of project what we expect in terms of values for some of these guys. So we'll start with the Baltimore Ravens. Now, obviously, one of the biggest adds that they made in free agency was on their defensive side, getting Calais Campbell. They did trade away Hayden Hurst to the Falcons, and then Marshall Yanda retired. So that's a big piece of news that a lot of fantasy analysts and gamers should really pay a lot of attention to, because Marshall Yanda was a generational guard, and it's going to be really hard to pick up that slack. But they did do some stuff in the draft to take care of that. They went after Tyree Phillips from Mississippi State and Ben Bredeson from Michigan to hopefully be able to fill the shoes that Marshall Yanda left. So at least they addressed the spot. Most likely their offensive line would be a little weaker because of that, but good to see that they're at least addressing it. And they also got Patrick Queen in the first round, possibly a replacement to CJ Mosley, and then J.K. Dobbins and Devin Duvernay, the biggest names for fantasy purposes. So overall, investing the offense, I would say that Lamar Jackson's trade value is probably about the same where it was, still sky high. Mark Ingram drops massively in Dynasty. I mean, already going 30 on 31, and them drafting J.K. Dobbins with a high second-round pick. There's no way that he is really expected to last, may not even be playing throughout this entire season. However, I do think if you have him, you can either flip him to the person that drafts J.K. Dobbins and get a decent pick for it because it's good security for that person, or you can just hang on to him and use him for one more year and hope that he can play the whole season. But overall, yeah, not much dynasty value anymore. J.K. Dobbins saw a massive boost to his value before the draft. He was, anywhere lingering between running back 3 and 5, and going to the Ravens for me lands him squarely in that number 3 running back outside of Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Jonathan Taylor. So he sees a massive up boost. Marquise Brown is still a bit of an anomaly. I wouldn't really buy or sell him right now. Definitely just we don't really know what this offense is going to continue to evolve into. If you have him, I wouldn't sell him, but I wouldn't also be actively trying to get him. They did get Devin Duvernay in this draft, who's another really fast guy, a sub 4.4 40-time guy that play primarily in the slot. So I don't really know that he contends too much with what Marquise Brown would do over the middle of the field, but they're both fast burner guys. So some competition there for Marquise Brown. That wide receiver core is still a little interesting. Their game is mostly about the run game and the tight end play. So Devin Duvernay, I think, got a pretty big boost to his value because he was pretty unnoticed in fantasy until he got to the Ravens. So he sees a good tick up, someone you want to target later in your drafts. And then Mark Andrews is also a bit of a mix. I think he has a very, very high value right now, and the market perceives him possibly as even higher than he should be. The efficiency that the Ravens offense had last year in terms of passing the ball, I don't really expect that to continue every single year, and Mark Andrews had a lot of boom-bust weeks, but people remember the booms, especially since they happened near the end of the year. So you might be able to get a decent haul trying to trade away Mark Andrews right now. He's my third-ranked tight end, so it's not like I'm saying you have to go sell high on him, but I think right now, just from what I've observed, there's a market valuation error on Mark Andrews just because of his season last year. And you might be able to get a pretty decent tight end and a good bit of something else in a trade for him. So that would be one trade away target, but definitely do your best to try to get J.K. Dobbins. I think even if it's not this year, by the time that he's leading this backfield, he's going to be possibly a top 5 running back in the NFL for fantasy. Okay, let's look at the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, they didn't do too much in the offseason. They added some guys on defense, and they lost Cordy Glenn and John Miller from their offensive line, which was already not great. Those guys didn't grade out too well on Pro Football Focus, but they were at least okay, and they didn't really do anything to address it. So in the draft, they didn't really go after O-line until they picked up a guy in the 6th round, and that was their only offensive line pick. Now, obviously, the biggest change to this team is they drafted Joe Burrow in the 1st round, and then they drafted T. Higgins in the 2nd. So they're making heavy investments in their offense. They let Andy Dalton go, and obviously Joe Burrow, people remembering what he did last year in college, he's definitely a high prospect, someone that you're going to be targeting. In every rookie draft, there's no rookie draft that he won't get picked up probably in the 1st or at latest 2nd round in one quarterback leagues. But he's going even as early as the 1-1 overall in Superflex leagues, which I think is a little ridiculous. I'd much rather have Jonathan Taylor or Clyde Edwards-Helaire than Joe Burrow, but I do think that it makes sense why people are so high on him, especially the way he played last year. So I think this is going to be a boost for the offense as a whole. That offensive line does scare me, though, and rookie quarterbacks have struggled with offensive lines. It's not like Joe Burrow is like Kyler Murray last year or like Russell Wilson, where he can just escape a bad offensive line. He's shifty and he has the ability to make space for himself, so I'm not concerned like he's going to completely bust in his first year, but it's going to be really hard. They're going to need to do some massive investments in that offensive line if they want Joe Burrow to be able to hit his peak production, especially since he is a little less mobile than some of the guys we've seen come out of college as of recent. Joe Mixon, same thing. I think Joe Mixon, this is going to be a wheels up season because he still did pretty well last year with a bad offensive line, and then having Joe Burrow there, having AJ Green back, getting T. Higgins, that's going to help open things up for the run game a bit. But I am a little concerned for the offensive line. I'm also concerned there have been rumblings that he's going to be holding out. So if that continues, I would try to use that as leverage to buy low on Joe Mixon, because I think Joe Mixon has shown us that he definitely has that potential to be one of those blue chip running backs in the NFL for fantasy purposes. And now that we're with Joe Burrow, there still might be a market imbalance. So Joe Mixon is still someone I would try to buy. Just know that the holdout potential is there, and that could impact the first couple weeks of your season. AJ Green is back. Not really much to say about his value. He hasn't really played well in the past couple of years. He's been hurt pretty much every year for I think about 3 years now, going on 32. I don't really expect much of him even this year. He's probably going to end up being more of a mentor than a fantasy asset. So if you have him, I mean, you can try to ride him one more year. Doubt you're going to get much for him in the open market, and I would not be looking to buy him. Tyler Boyd is the interesting name here. Now, Tyler Boyd, I project him of all the wide receivers here that he's most likely going to lead this team in yards this year. Now, obviously, the production that the Bengals put up is going to determine how valuable that is for fantasy, but I really think that there's a massive devaluation of Tyler Boyd right now. People are seeing AJ Green come back, and they drafted T. Higgins, so Tyler Boyd's fantasy value is in like the basement right now. So you can probably mop him up for pretty cheap if you need like a flex play at wide receiver. I think Tyler Boyd's going to actually put up a pretty decent season. And then next year, John Ross, they didn't pick up their 5th-year option, and then AJ Green is likely gone. So unless they heavily go after the wide receiver either in free agency or the draft, T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd will be your main two guys there. So I don't know. I think Tyler Boyd is a interesting profile. If you have him, I would hold. I would not try to sell him because you're not going to get value for him. If you don't have him, I would put an offer out there and see if you can get him a little bit cheaper. John Ross, they're getting rid of him after this season unless he does a complete turnaround. And then T. Higgins, I think his value went up massively going to be able to play with Joe Burrow for his career, so he became a early 2nd round pick. And then they let Tyler Eifert go, so CJ Uzomah, I guess, is the tight end there now. There's not a lot of clarity as to what's going to happen there at the tight end field, so I'm not really targeting anyone there yet. We'll have to play a wait and see on that. Okay, let's speed up. Let's get to the Cleveland Browns now. They added Jack Conklin, which is massive. They also added Austin Hooper. They did let 2 linebackers go, which they kind of addressed in the draft, but they also got Jedrick Wills in the 1st round. So 2 massive moves to make that offensive line healthy, beefy, and could very well become one of the best offensive lines in the league, which is great news for, I mean, pretty much everybody. This is a good tick up for Baker Mayfield. Now, this is his last, I don't know, I feel like this is his last year to really do something, if they put a massive offensive line around him, they've given him just gobs and gobs of offensive weapons. If he can't produce in this system this year, they're probably going to be looking for his replacement next year. And even though they spent a first overall pick on him, and there's been a lot of changes in that organization, no one's really tethered to his success. And if he doesn't perform this year, but I have faith in him. We saw a lot from him in his first year. Last year, Freddie Kitchens was definitely in over his head. But switching over to Stefanski, they're definitely going to be more of a run-oriented team, don't get me wrong. So Baker Mayfield may not have the volume that he needs to be a valuable fantasy asset, but I think he'll see an improvement in his overall quarterbacking play. If he does, and it's impossible to think that they wouldn't have success in this offense unless their entire offensive line gets hurt, which is always a possibility. This is a really good improvement for Nick Chubb as well. Now, there's still the thorn in his side of Kareem Hunt, which keeps me from putting Nick Chubb into that elite tier of running backs. And the nice thing is, because they invested in the offensive line and people have forgotten how much they used Kareem Hunt last year, which again, it was another regime, so it might be a little bit different now with Stefanski there in terms of how they're going to use this. But they did invest significant money into keeping Kareem Hunt there, which only makes sense if they're planning on using him. So Nick Chubb could have a pretty good season overall, but don't expect him to have a lot of passing volume, and Kareem Hunt could even steal some touchdowns. So Nick Chubb is going to be right up there in my low-end RB1s for dynasty value. You might be able to sell him pretty high, and that would probably be what I'd be looking to do, especially on the cusp of the draft with them not taking another running back and just showing how much they're trying to build the offensive line. You might be able to get top dollar for Nick Chubb right now. Kareem Hunt, I memean, he's kind of an anomaly right now. If you have him, probably just keep him and see what they end up doing with him. I doubt you're going to get value for him. Odell Beckham Jr. is another one of those really, really mixed prospects right now. I had him in a league, and I traded him away because I was able to get really good value for him, but he's not like a must-sell by any means. Don't sell him low, but I also wouldn't be like actively trying to buy him because this team is really posturing to be a run-first team, which means that Odell Beckham will probably not see anywhere near the volume that, maybe not even close to the volume that he had last year. Now, if Baker is able to have some more time in the pocket, he should actually be able to hit Odell Beckham on some of those deep throws that they just missed on last year. So it could actually be a benefit for him, even if the volume goes down. He could have some more explosive plays, explosive games, because if Baker actually isn't getting killed every single time he has the ball in his hands, could be a good thing. So I like Odell Beckham this year. In redraft, I'll be targeting him later in the third round because I think there's just enormous upside there. But in Dynasty, it's not. Basically a hold and wait. Landry, same thing. I think he's actually a little undervalued right now. Never seems to really hold the value that he actually has. So you might be able to target him and get him pretty cheap. And then Austin Hooper, I think this is a really bad landing spot for him. He was getting force-fed targets last year. And it's not like from a talent and athletic profile that Austin Hooper really grades as like the top elite tier of tight ends in this league. So if you have a Browns fan or someone that just believes in Austin Hooper in your league, I would try to flip him for like some younger tight end guys and some other value either in picks or another player. Get a guy like an Ian Thomas or a Mike Gesicki or Jonnu Smith, but I'd try to get out on Austin Hooper before we see the low target volume that they're going to give him in Cleveland. And then David Njoku, he picked up his option. I don't know why, but he needs to get traded somewhere else. Okay, last team, Pittsburgh Steelers, and then we'll get you guys out of here. So they add Eric Ebron, going to be a massive boost for his value there. Maybe not massive, but at least up. Derek Watt, they added a fullback there. Ooh, going blurry. So Derek Watt, they added a fullback there, could really help the run game. And then Steven Wisnowski, I think I said that right. They added him after losing B.J. Finney, so keeping their offensive line pretty much the same. They also drafted Kevin Dotson, guard, in about the middle of the draft, but then they drafted Chase Claypool and Anthony McFarland. Now, Chase Claypool, really big-bodied receiver that a lot of people see him as more of a tight end. They don't think he has the speed or the shiftiness to be able to create space on the outside, which is what they're already slotting him in as. So wouldn't be surprised to see them eventually shift into more of a tight end role and even convincing him to switch positions altogether. And then Anthony McFarland, a guy that I feel like is very, very, very undervalued in fantasy right now. Guy who runs a 4.45 40 time, very shifty, a little bit smaller of a running back, but has a pretty decent profile from college. And it's not like James Conner. I mean, James Conner had arguably the longest list of injuries in 2019, and a lot of them are like connective tissue injuries that just show. And even over the course of the last couple years, James Conner has been often injured, and it's been really hard to expect him to be able to play a full season. Based on the beat reporters out there in Pittsburgh, it looks like James Conner is pretty much like on his final slots. Like, they're already talking about lowering the number of touches that he gets, and it's very likely that he's not going to be playing for the Steelers in 2021. So by the midway point through the season, don't be surprised if they're giving Anthony McFarland a run. Just see what they have in the guy and see if they need to go after a running back in 2021 or if they have their guy. So James Conner, if you could get out on him now, there's buzz that he won the draft. I would really take advantage of that. So he's a massive sell candidate for me. Ben Roethlisberger, obviously, this is probably his last year, if not his second to last year. So he's the kind of guy in Superflex leagues you try to acquire if you need like a 1-year fill-in for a backup quarterback, but not really worth much. But I really like Anthony McFarland, guys. Benny Snell is nothing. He's incredibly slow, and last year he had multiple opportunities to take over that backfield, and he showed us nothing. Jalen Samuels has been an interesting player, but he has had multiple opportunities as well to take over that backfield, and it's always turned into a committee when he was out there. So clearly the team doesn't believe in Jalen Samuels. Anthony McFarland is, in my opinion, he's the most undernoticed guy right now in terms of potential for massive value, even by the end of this year. Because if James Conner gets hurt again, or he's just not playing effectively, and the Steelers want to see what they have in Anthony McFarland, and he takes off, man, this could be like your 12th round guy in redraft leagues, or your guy that you get in the third round of dynasty rookie drafts, that by the end of the season everyone is like mad that they didn't think to do it themselves. So don't sleep on Anthony McFarland. Also, Juju Smith-Schuster is another one of those really weird guys. I guess in terms of where I value him compared to what I've seen in the market, I'd probably try to buy low on him. I think getting back with Ben Roethlisberger and then having Deontay Johnson, James Washington, and Chase Claypool there, he's going to be able to avoid getting shadowed, not having to play on the outside, probably play more in the slot this year, which is where he's really good. I think he's going to have a really good rebound season. And if the owner that has him is disappointed with last year and doesn't really know how to value him, you might be able to get him cheap. But I feel like the majority of people right now are just in a hold position because they know what he was worth last year and they saw how much it dropped, and they would rather just wait and see if it's for real or if it was just a Devlin Hodges and Mason Rudolph situation that made his value go down. So if you have him, don't sell him low by any means, and if you don't have him, try to acquire him low if you can. Deontay Johnson is another name. Like, I guess I'm really bullish on the Steelers offense, but I would really try to buy low on Deontay Johnson. I could definitely see a massive breakout this year. I mean, this is all banking on Ben Roethlisberger being able to throw the ball even at 80% efficiency or effectiveness of what he used to have, but I'm banking on that being a reality. He wouldn't come back and play because he was already thinking about retirement, so if he couldn't play, he wouldn't be trying to come back. So Deontay Johnson is another really good buy low candidate. Chase Claypool I'm not in on, especially as I said earlier, a lot of people see him more as just a tight end. I don't really know that he's going to translate into an outside receiver in the NFL, but the Steelers do have a good track record of drafting wide receivers that nobody believes in and turning them into fantasy gold, so I'm willing to admit I might eat my words there. And then Eric Ebron and Vance McDonald, every year we prop up the tight end in Pittsburgh and say, oh, this is going to be a great tight end for fantasy, and it never really works out. A lot of times it's due to injury, but Ebron and McDonald are often injured guys. Definitely like Ebron more than McDonald, and I think this helps his value because he wasn't being used much at all in Indianapolis once Andrew Luck was gone. So I think Eric Ebron could be a dark horse low tight end 1 in 2020 if he can stay healthy for most of the year, but a low end tight end 1 is very rarely worth anything, so I wouldn't be trying to acquire him in Dynasty for really anything. So Anyway, that is the AFC North. We'll be going through all the divisions here over the course of the next week or so. But if you guys don't have the patience to wait, feel free to check out our website. It's in the link below, and you guys can see our entire Dynasty rankings for free. Access that through our website. So check those out and hit that like and subscribe button to help the channel. And we'll see you guys in the next video.